We've got a full day planned for you. Alzheimer's is a disease sometimes I think that gets overlooked, but it's also a disease that knows really no boundaries from a perspective of race, religion, socioeconomic status. I think we probably all have known somebody in our lifetimes that have suffered from this disease. I was telling some of my staff the other day, I can remember my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and it was a scary thing for her. She went shopping one afternoon and she couldn't find her way home. She actually drove around for a couple of hours before running into somebody that, not physically running in, but meeting somebody that knew her and helped her to get home. But for me, that really sent a strong message home to me on what a serious disease this is. So I just want to thank our partners for allowing us to host this and put this on for you. I think you'll enjoy the day. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Indeed, my name is Maxine. I work with the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you for coming today. We really appreciate it. And of course, to our sponsors, greatly. And next to me is Joe Zapata. He's with the South Texas Geriatric Education Centers, part of the UT Health Science Center. We have been working this symposium, doing several throughout our service area. This is the second to the last, and our last one will be in Del Rio on May the 30th. Just some housekeeping items. Keep your phones on mute. You don't have to turn them off, just keep them on mute and be respectful with our speakers. And we are, oh yes, I'm sorry. In your folders, there should be an advocacy card. It's a purple with a sticker. Purple and white with a sticker card, and if you don't have one, we'll gladly pass one out. We're always recruiting advocates in our service area because the only way we can make changes in legislation pass forward so that we can get more funding for research, education, and care support is if our senators, our congressmen listen to us, and so the card is part of that, the advocacy. If you don't have it, we'll pass it out to you. And also, we will use it as the raffle card, so it's very important that you use it because we have some door prizes. Without further ado, let me just pass the microphone to Joe. So here he is.
Thank you very much, Maxine. Again, my name is Joe Zapata. I work with the South Texas GEC, which is part of the South Texas University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. I have a lot of family who lives in Crystal City, and I always pass by Uvalde going through, and I always wanted to stop at Jack's Steakhouse, and last time I got that opportunity, and it was a very good place. So I highly recommend it. It was recommended to me, so I had an enjoyable time at Jack's Steakhouse. Us and the Alzheimer's Association ladies ate there, and we had a great time. So it was a very excellent place. Sticking with the folder, we've got a couple of items I'm going to just go through. One of them is a Symposium data DVD. You can order a copy of the video that we're going to be recording for the entire day. So you want to get a copy of that to disseminate among your colleagues. You can definitely put that in the order form, and we'll take that at the end of the conference today. For those who are getting continuing education credits, we have the Statement of Attendance form. The most important page is page 2. If you're getting any kind of CEs or even a certificate of attendance, go ahead and fill that out and submit it to me at the end of the conference. I will not take it any earlier than the end of the conference. There's one little hitch for those who are trying to attain social worker CEs. How many social workers do we have? Okay, ma'am, sir. Okay. I was unable to obtain they were being applied for. They didn't come back in time. So I'm going to give you a certificate of attendance for social workers, and then when it gets approved, I will send you the official social worker CE. And lastly is, well, among the forms that I'm providing, is the participant profile form. This is a voluntary demographic form that you fill out. You can fill out as much information as you like, as you feel comfortable with. And what this information provides us with grant opportunities to provide conferences in the future. People who have attended our conferences in the past filled it out, giving an opportunity for you to attend today's conference. So if you can please pass the flyer forward. that'd be greatly appreciated. And of course, if you have any questions about this form, go ahead and please contact me and I'll provide any answers that I can. Also in the form, in the folder, or today's agenda, and a couple of forms provided from the Alzheimer's Association, a sign-in form, and definitely the conference evaluation. If you have any questions about these forms, you can definitely talk to the ladies up front or contact me, and I'll walk you and step you through. And of course, if you have any questions pertaining to CDUs and how you will attain your certificates, definitely you can come talk to me anytime during the conference. So I appreciate your time, and I will hand it back to Maxine to start the conference. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Well, should I call Jenny? We're just going to make 5 minutes. Let's just take a couple of minutes. Our first speaker will be on. We're having some technical problems. So we'll start in about a couple of minutes with Jenny as our first speaker.
While we're waiting, I'm gonna sing a song for you. Not really, that would be a disaster, but I do want to welcome you. My name is Olga Port. I am the director for the Crossroads program for senior adults. We are the department of the Uvalde Memorial Hospital. We provide services for people that are elderly, that are in the range between 55 and older, who are experiencing some life transitions, and they just need a little help. They need a place where they can feel safe and they can come and talk about their issues and find hope with us. I feel that this is a real blessing to have the Alzheimer's Association come to our community and educate us, and hopefully provide us with some direction and some hope. I have a personal experience with a family member who has Alzheimer's. I have seen her go from a very strong and independent woman to a totally dependent woman. And it is heartbreaking. I hope that as we listen and learn about Alzheimer's, that we will also realize the importance to continue further research and to someday, hopefully, find answers that can prevent such a debilitating disease. I would like for you to leave here with some hope in your hearts. I will also want to inform you that in the end of April, I think it will be in one of your Uvalde Memorial bags, we will be offering an Alzheimer's support group at the Crossroads building, right across from the hospital. So if you're interested in coming to that, that will be a monthly event. We also have a physician who has worked with Alzheimer's patients. We have Alzheimer's patients in our program when they are in their early stages. So if you need that kind of assistance, we are there to help you. Please feel free to ask any questions of anybody, any of the speakers that are here today. I don't think that you will be disappointed. Maxine, Jenny did an excellent job of recruiting professional people that have lots of experience. So I hope that you will leave here, like I said, with some hope. Thank you. You have a nice day.
Yes, we do have Jenny Funk. She has been our fearless leader for many years at the Alzheimer's Association and has a wealth of information that she's acquired over the years. She is my boss, so if you want to give a good review on me, please, I encourage it. So Jenny will talk about the basics of Alzheimer's disease, and if we cannot get this PowerPoint started, we'll definitely wing it today. So without further ado, here's Jenny for you.
Thanks, Maxine, very much. Hi, good morning to all of you. I can talk and talk, so I can fill space while Mark is working his magic. I'm Jenny Funk. I am with the Alzheimer's Association, as Maxine said. She and I are both on staff, and we are working together today with Joe and Mark from the Geriatric Education Center, and are extremely thankful for the partnership to be able to bring this kind of education to your community. Also, I can't say enough thank you to all of the sponsors and underwriters who have exhibit tables when you first came in. We would really appreciate it if you would stop by each one, because kind of like what Olga was saying, whether you're touched now personally, or you work in the field of most definitely working with people with Alzheimer's disease, or sometime in your future, you just never know what kind of resources you'll need. So having all of those resources available it's very helpful, and we would not be able to bring this kind of conference to Uvalde without them. So please thank them as well. I also want to say our most sincere thanks to all of the volunteer committee members who planned this event, most definitely led by Olga, but can you guys stand up? I just wholeheartedly want to give you our most sincere thanks for all of the work that you have done on this committee. Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. Just everyone who has, and led by Miss Olga, we just really appreciate. That's another thing. We have a chapter that covers 47 counties in the state of Texas. And we basically have two offices. We have one located in San Antonio in the medical center, and we have one individual staff person in Corpus Christi. And so, like all Alzheimer's Association chapters across the country, we rely very heavily on volunteers to be able to help us get the word out, raise awareness, educate, provide support. So we sincerely can't thank you enough. I had this come up during registration, so I thought I would just give a little bit of history of Alzheimer's disease has been around for more than 100 years. And the reason why we ended up with such a horrible word name for this terrible disease is because when you are a doctor and you basically discover something, it gets named after you. So Dr. Alois Alzheimer was the one who basically discovered this disease, and it was named after him, which is how we ended up with Alzheimer's disease, a very nasty word to both say and spell. However, if you're smart enough to discover something, that is how that happened. And over the years, we get asked a lot, is it just something that's come up in the last 20, 30 years? No, it was just called by other names. In the past, it was called hardening of the arteries, or sometimes just senile, senility, crazy. It's been named all kinds of things. But skip forward now to 2014, it is amazing that researchers and scientists, and we know now more about Alzheimer's disease in the last 15 years than in the 100+ years that it's been around. It's come a long way. For those of us who are personally touched, most definitely not fast enough, but we feel like the momentum is heading in the right direction to, as Olga said, have some hope for the future where we will get to the point where we will be able to prevent Alzheimer's disease and have a treatment for Alzheimer's disease to stop it in its tracks, and also to find a cure for those who currently have it. So, thanks, Mark.
Let's try it.
Let's try it. Okay, so without further ado, this first presentation to get things started off is the basics, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease from the Alzheimer's Association. And this can most definitely run longer than an hour, so I will make sure and stay on time, most definitely with Joe as our timekeeper. He keeps us on track for sure. But there's so much information loaded into this. I also apologize that we don't have copies of several of the presentations today. However, if you will let us know during a break, if you want it emailed, if you want us to mail you a hard copy, we can get these and get them out to you. So we definitely want you to have this information in your hands. One of the most interesting things, I think, and I hope it's going to work today, is this presentation has videos embedded into it of people who are sharing their stories who have Alzheimer's disease. That in itself is a huge change from just 5, 10, 15 years ago, because again, there's still stigma that exists with this, but more and more people who have the disease are speaking up in the earlier stages and saying, look, I am still working, driving, doing all kinds of things, and I can advocate and speak for myself. So that in itself will change the trajectory of this disease as well. So we hope that these will work. And the first one is Dr. Peterson, who's director of the Mayo Alzheimer's Disease Research Clinic. So I will ad-lib for Dr. Peterson. Basically, he is talking about the trajectory of the disease, how many people who currently have it, which is at least 5.5 million Americans. Alzheimer's disease isn't restricted to just the United States. Worldwide, it's estimated that 35 million people have Alzheimer's disease. So if you'll just skip on past him, I appreciate it. Okay, so this comes up on a regular basis. People who are afraid for themselves. I think I have Alzheimer's, or people joke about it, most definitely, unfortunately. So one of the first things is, yes, we don't often think about the brain in the body as an organ, but it is. And all of us are very aware of the aging process, that as we age, things change on the exterior. There are also normal aging changes that happen as the brain ages. Those are basically called typical or normal age-related changes, whatever normal is, but non-dementia and Alzheimer's related. So that kind of thing is, we're talking about making a bad decision once in a while. Well, who makes a bad decision once in a while? Right? It doesn't mean you have Alzheimer's disease. This one's a little more serious. Hopefully we don't raise your hand on this one, but age-related changes that you might see in an individual who is aging is missing a monthly payment, or starting to see some things possibly in the checkbook that aren't quite working. Now this, forgetting which day it is and remembering later, it takes, sometimes you really have to think about what day it is. I work in a very small office of women, and they all know, for me, if I don't write it down, I can't remember. I can't remember. And so lots of little note-taking and things is very, very normal. Forgetting which word to use, forgetting a name, that's very typical age-related type normal things. And losing things from time to time. The one that's the example most often used is forgetting where your keys are. Well, I'll go through and you'll see there's a huge difference between someone who lays down their keys and forgets where they laid them down, and someone who has dementia and a brain disease where you hand them keys and they don't know the name of the object, they don't know what to do with the object, that it starts an automobile and you drive with it. That's a huge difference. Okay, once we... Okay,
So sorry.
no problem. I apologize too. I will say also that this presentation, you can have access to this on the website of the association, so I am truly sorry that we don't have volume for you to be able to hear from Joyce, who has Alzheimer's disease. And for her, she talks about the fact that she has a PhD, and she got to the point where she was going through grocery store lines and she wasn't able to count out the correct change. She did okay with dollar bills when paying for something, but she started to not be able to count out change correctly. And for her, she thought, okay, what is going on? That's a bit of a red flag, but maybe that's just normal. But that was one of the first symptoms that she experienced, not knowing if it was something more serious. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over the 10 warning signs, because that in itself is an hour-long presentation. But as you go through these, I think one of the most significant things is most people outside of the world, and I'm going to assume that everyone in this room has an experience with someone with Alzheimer's disease. And so when I say people outside this room, people in the world, in the community who have not yet, often just think about Alzheimer's still as, oh, it's memory loss. or you just lose a little bit of memory loss. And the thing that happens, and I'll show you what happens with the brain, it's so much more than that. It's memory loss, and for most of the time, Alzheimer's disease specifically starts in the part of the brain that holds our short-term memories, as in, what did you have for dinner last night? It might take a second to trace back and think about what you had for dinner, but you should be able to do it. A memory change that disrupts daily life, that is much more significant. Challenges in planning or solving problems, completing a familiar task. All of this is related to if you've always been the one in the family who's done the checkbook and suddenly things become very out of balance, bills aren't getting paid, things are done incorrectly, money is being given away, or you don't even really understand where it's going. That is a warning sign, a red flag, that something that's always been done, suddenly it's not working anymore. Confusion with time or place, that's by far one of the most significant warning signs, because for individuals who actually do have dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's or any of the other, they're not in present day. So when you say, what do you mean you can't, where's the kitchen or where's the restroom? You've lived in this house for 40 years. Again, they're not in current day, so getting confused about time and place, or when individuals start talking about 1956 as if it's right now. One of the first things that I noticed with my mom is that she is talking in detail about a plane crash accident that she was in when she was 14 years old, and it's crystal clear. But short-term memory is not at all. So that is one of those warning signs to watch for. This one's kind of less known, but dementia does interfere with the part of the brain that controls how we see, what our vision is like. So vision and hearing, oftentimes in the beginning, are not actually picked up as a warning sign. Oh, maybe he just can't see anymore. He just can't see anymore. Oh, he can't hear me. He's not answering my question, so it must be hearing loss. Well, actually, that can be a warning sign to look for. Grammar, communication, this one's a significant warning sign that unfortunately just progresses and gets worse, because the way that we all get along, we communicate. And the part of the brain that allows us to do that gets deeply affected by Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So new problems with speaking, stopping in the middle of a conversation and just stopping, or answering a question that was not the question, giving an answer to a question that doesn't fit. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So when people, unless they're seriously concerned about some of these warning signs and they joke and say, I laid down my bag and now I can't find it, one of the most important things that we say, if you have the ability to sit down undistracted and go through your head, okay, I got home, the dog was barking to get out, I needed to use the restroom, the telephone was ringing, the alarm was going off, okay, that's where I threw that bag, that's where I laid it down. My brain's ability to go through those steps would not be there if I had dementia or Alzheimer's. And you can also apply that to yourself. If you have the ability to retrace your steps, you're doing okay. Decreased or poor judgment, like that thing of normal, we all make some bad mistakes or a bad decision here and there. This is much more significant. This is someone who you find out is, handed out $5,000 out of their checking account, made a really bad decision without knowing that they were doing it. So judgment, which is right in the front part of the brain, gets very affected. Withdrawal, that's a warning sign of early signs of dementia, and changes in mood and personality. So we'll go ahead, Mark. Thanks. Okay, so let me just go over some basics of dementia itself. This is by far one of the most commonly asked questions we get, or we'll have people who come in the office and say, You know, the doctor sent us out with a little pat and, well, your loved one has a little touch of dementia, or a little bit of dementia. Or, oh, she has dementia, but she does not have Alzheimer's disease. Well, that's actually a weird sentence to say, and so here's why. Okay, so think of dementia as a very broad umbrella term. I've heard a neurologist describe it, and it made a lot of sense. Ice cream. Ice cream is a very broad term for a type of food. If you walked in and said, and I'm working at an ice cream shop, and you said, I'd like to order some ice cream, I would have to go, well, that's great. Which kind? Same thing with dementia. Dementia is not an actual medical diagnosis, even though sometimes it's handed out as that. It's not. It is a general umbrella term similar to ice cream. And what matters is what causes dementia. What is the cause? And I'll go through this more specifically, but we use kind of the umbrella analogy that the long handle that comes down from the umbrella is Alzheimer's disease. Because out of all the dementia symptoms that are out there, Alzheimer's causes the most. And there are many, many, many other kinds of dementias. I think more than 50 plus. I'm not exactly sure, but the list goes on and on. Today, we're going to talk about irreversible dementias, such as Alzheimer's disease. But there are also reversible dementias, which that's significant. That means they're treatable, curable, no more dementia symptoms. So that's really important. So dementia, broad term. Go ahead. Dementia, the definition of that is you have cognitive loss, which who feels like some days they have, you know, some days better than others, we have some cognitive loss. Dementia means that it's serious, it's significant, it's having an effect on daily life. And it's progressing. It's not every once in a while, it is a progressive type of negative impact on daily life. So, loss of cognitive functioning, serious enough to impact daily life. And it does not just cause problems in memory and a little bit of memory loss here and there or significant memory loss. Dementia affects every part of the brain. Our language, as I talked about, the whole part of our brain that controls how we communicate and speak and all of those things. Our thought processes and how we have linear thought processes where things make sense, where we're logical. It interferes with that. It interferes with navigation. One diagnosis and disease under the umbrella of dementia is Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease causes dementia symptoms. Some more so in individuals than others, just like every person who goes through Alzheimer's disease does not go through it the same way. But Parkinson's specifically has a very big effect on navigation. Behavior, again, we'll talk about that more today. Some are affected more in that part of the brain that controls our behaviors, some less. Personality and mood, some have significant personality and mood changes. Significant, some do not. And then just the ability to plan and organize. To get up and go brush your teeth. We don't think about that, we do that on autopilot. But for individuals with dementia, it interferes with that ability to find the right room, find the restroom, find the right utensil to use to brush your teeth. We'll have families come in and say, is this a warning sign? We found her in the bathroom with a toothbrush and she was trying to brush her teeth with it. That's a warning sign. So that's dementia. Okay, so here's a graph. I know it is kind of bright in here to see some of these slides, but so Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of a brain disease that causes dementia symptoms. And we know it makes up at least 70% of the whole graph of dementia out there. Then vascular dementia is the second most common at about 17%. What we understand from researchers and doctors now is that Lewy body dementia is climbing fast on reaching the amount of prevalence of individuals who have vascular dementia. And then all the other kind of dementias fall in about 13%. So that's why you hear about Alzheimer's the most out of all of them. I will say that for our nonprofit organization, our legal name goes on and on and on. Alzheimer's disease and related dementias incorporated, such and such. Our doing business name is Alzheimer's Association because we couldn't go around with a name that covered all of them. But we always make sure to point out that we have information on the other types of dementia. We're not, you don't just come to us for, well, if it's not Alzheimer's, can we? No, absolutely. It's just that couldn't have a name that was the length of the sentence. So that's the breakdown of the irreversible types of dementia. Go ahead. Thanks. Mild cognitive impairment, I'm going to skip right over that. Mild cognitive impairment is still something that we hear different things about, that it could be the preliminary stages of individuals who later develop Alzheimer's disease. And then we also hear that, well, actually there are people who have mild cognitive impairment that does not progress to Alzheimer's. So I'm going to pass through that. Right now, to just go over some more details specifically about Alzheimer's disease, it is a brain disorder. Alzheimer's disease is not a normal part of aging. You don't just get older and, oh, you get Alzheimer's disease. It's a brain disease. You either have it or you don't. And it is progressive, unfortunately. There is no way to keep it from progressing through the stages. We went over it's the most common form of dementia. There is no cure as of yet. As of yet. It is the 6th leading cause of death in America. That is a statistic that we've only been able to use in the last couple of years because history shows that many, many people have died from Alzheimer's disease, but on the death certificate, it gets listed as something else, like pneumonia or other things. But truly, as families have advocated, the true reality was it was the brain disease of Alzheimer's disease that caused the death. So now they're actually able to, the Centers for Disease Control and all of those entities are able to track now. And it's the 6th leading cause of death in America. And it affects over 5 million Americans. We know that at least 200,000 of those have what's called younger onset Alzheimer's disease, which means younger than 65. Steve has Alzheimer's. I'm very sorry you can't hear what he has to say. Again, I think one of the most significant things is that that's all real. All of our training, they share their stories about what it's like. And most certainly it also shows that a lot of times what people think in their mind of what Alzheimer's is, oh, it's a really, really old person lying in a bed. Well, actually there are stages. And no one gets to a late stage without first going through the beginning stages. And oftentimes, beginning stages, there are so many people among us who have early stage Alzheimer's disease, who are still working, who are still driving. So just to go through a little bit of how this works, I wish you could see this picture a little better, but again, we don't necessarily think about the inside of the brain, and I'll leave this for doctors to be able to describe, but in this presentation, it's important to know that right now, as we're going through, there are 100 billion nerve cells that are creating a network in our brain, and they're all firing off. The ability for me to speak, to move, to talk with you, for you guys to be here, your brains, it's amazing what's going through. And signals are traveling through what's basically what this is called, otherwise known as a neuron forest. And that's what forms everything about us. Our thoughts, our memories, everything that makes us up. And Alzheimer's disease destroys those neurons. It actually destroys brain cells. And right now, we don't have anything in science and research that either brings them back to life or reconnects the connections. Another important thing to note is that, again, Alzheimer's disease is not just about memory loss. It affects every part of the brain. So, this side of the brain over here, that's the front, and that's called the frontotemporal, and that is significant because it holds our ability to have good judgments or bad judgments, good decisions, bad decisions, and the ability to reason. Oh boy, I'm trying to think of a specific reasoning argument that I have had with my mom that I knew better than to try to reason with her because she no longer has that ability. There is no reasoning. Think about a young child. Can you reason with a young child or ask them, would you like to go to the dentist today? No, absolutely not. There is no reasoning. Well, this is why it's important that we go. Yeah, and? So that is a significant part of the brain that gets affected. Language, sense of temperature, touch, pain, most definitely memory, and there's two parts. There's the part that holds our short-term memory and our long-term memories from when we were very young. Two different areas. Again, Alzheimer's disease for most individuals starts in short-term. Last night, yesterday, or an hour ago, or 30 seconds ago. It just depends. Movement and balance, that most definitely gets affected. Vision is in the back of the brain, that is affected. And basic functions, including breathing. What do we have to survive to maintain life? We need to be able to eat and drink. And that is why, that's basically the reason why Alzheimer's disease is fatal. It affects the brain in the end stages to the point where it cannot tell the body how to do those basic functions. Go ahead. Thanks. Oops. There you go. Okay, so this one's a hard one, I think, to look at this. This is, I remember when I started working at the association this month, 13 years ago, and we talked about the only way that you could actually get a true diagnosis of Alzheimer's was after someone passed away. And they could do a brain slide, and then they could actually go in and be able to look at the brain. Well now, amazingly, skip forward to 2014, there's a lot of things that they can now do on people's brains while we are alive. It's amazing. Again, it's not enough, particularly not enough for those of us who need this yesterday, but it has come a long way. And for this, we use this sometimes with families who just really, and professionals who really struggle with, she's doing this on purpose to drive me crazy. She's doing this on purpose. She's manipulating me. I know that this is not what the doctor says it is. It's purposeful. And we use this horrible slide to look at that shows what Alzheimer's disease actually does to the brain as it destroys brain cells and the neurons that connect everything that's firing off. It literally shrinks the brain. And not after death, but as the disease is progressing through the brain. So as you can see on the left, that's a healthy brain. We call that a healthy, plump brain. I can remember when we used to travel around doing presentations and buy cauliflower and use cauliflower as an example, a close example to what a normal brain looks like. It's about the same weight, and it has all those nooks and crannies, and it's healthy, and it's filled out. Alzheimer's disease enlarges the ventricles, and it shrivels, particularly near the hippocampus. So that, we use that to be able to just keep, and I think about this for myself, keep going back to this. It's the disease. It's the disease that's causing this. It's the disease that's causing all those warning signs and symptoms that I talked about a minute ago. It's the disease that's doing that, if it is Alzheimer's disease. Right? Oh, okay, so Kitty talks about her husband, Bill, who they worked on a political campaign and they were so involved, and one of the first signs that they realized was they stayed up all night and they found out who was elected, and by the afternoon, her husband, Bill, was saying, well, what was the outcome? Who was elected? And that for her was, okay, this is serious. This is a significant change. How does he not know after we worked on, volunteering on a campaign for months? Go ahead. One more. Okay, so risk factors. Most definitely, another commonly asked question everyone wants to know. How do you get it? Why do you get it? Why does a family of 7, why do 4 people in a family of 7 get Alzheimer's disease and 3 never have it, never have any symptoms? The number one risk factor for developing and getting Alzheimer's disease is age, which means every single one of us in this room are at risk for developing Alzheimer's disease, because what's one thing we have zero control over? The fact that we are born and then we age. And I have to tell you, I have such a hard time, I really have to bite my tongue sometimes when I hear people make derogatory statements about older individuals or the aging process, because what I really want to say is, which direction are you going in? I mean, that's happening. We're all happening. I hope that we all get to live long enough to be old, to get to this point. But again, this isn't a normal part of aging. This is a brain disease that affects some and does not affect others. And primary risk factor is age, which we have no control over. I'm sorry to say, but there's a reason for this. The incidence is higher among women than men. Only studies show because there are more older women living than men. And as age goes up, risk goes up, prevalence goes up, so more women have Alzheimer's disease because we live longer. Out of all the things that we know, Down syndrome for a long time has been highly correlated with later developing Alzheimer's disease. Our national office is actually in a research, have now partnered with a lot of researchers who have worked on Down syndrome for a long time, trying to just learn more about that high prevalence connection. Okay, family history. This is always a worry. I get to worry about this now with my mom. Many people do. If my mom had it, or my sister, or my grandmother, or my uncle, or my grandfather, does that mean I'm going to get it, or my kids are going to get it? Well, it does increase your risk, like other diseases. So the best way I've heard, I had a neurologist explain that we're all at a 10% risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. If you have a family history, you bump up to 20% risk. If you have a parent or close family relative, a parent or a sibling who has younger onset Alzheimer's, as in 40s, 50s, and 60s, those families, if they allow it, are heavily studied in research because they tend to make up the truly what's considered hereditary or genetic Alzheimer's, which is less than 4% of all the Alzheimer's that's out there. So true genetically passed Alzheimer's is actually a very small percentage. You're at a higher risk if you have a family history, but it does not mean that you are going to develop Alzheimer's disease or others in your family. They have been able to narrow down and really, did that skip forward? Mm-hmm. No? Okay, it's coming in a later slide. So I'll go back to that in a second. One of the most important things that we try to educate and get across is that of all the great physicians, there are specific physicians who specialize in this. So selecting a doctor and getting a diagnosis and actually finding out if it is dementia, if it's a reversible one or an irreversible one, getting a diagnosis from a doctor is very important, and a doctor who has specific experience. So we're talking about geriatricians, neurologists, neuropsychiatrists, neuropsychologists, people who have had significant training and background in this.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We talked just I'll kind of go through this quickly, but we definitely try to talk about making a list, because without a doubt, everything slows down. It seems to take so long if you have someone who is showing dementia symptoms to, first of all, get them to a doctor and to describe what's happening. So we recommend keeping a list of symptoms. Be specific. Have your information walking in so that if you do get a very brief amount of time, you feel like, oh, I got all the important points out that I needed to. Getting input from other family members is really important. And bringing medications, because medication interaction can cause dementia symptoms, and that's very significant. Go ahead. So, steps in the assessment, there is no one way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. This disease, it's not like others where you can go in and get a blood test, or you can get labs done, or you can, anything. There's just no one test. We desperately need that because it can be incredibly difficult to diagnose some individuals with, is it Alzheimer's, or is it Lewy body, or is it vascular, or is it something else? So there are a lot of things involved in the diagnosis process. I will say that when we're on helpline calls and we try to recommend and give references to families, we hear about our sister chapters, like the ones over in Florida, where they actually have diagnostic centers for Alzheimer's disease, where you can go in and get sort of like one-stop, you can get all of this done in one place. I'm sorry to say in San Antonio, in that large city, we don't have that available. There are some places throughout Texas, but you gotta go through the process of traveling. But all of this is very important to be able to rule out if it's anything else other than Alzheimer's. Because without a doubt, doctors don't want or like, and it makes sense to hand out a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. Because we know it's fatal, and it's oftentimes, it's not good. So I think that I believe with so many people who call our helpline and they say, well, they said it was dementia, but they didn't go any further. Just think about the word itself. Dementia doesn't quite have the alarming factor of Alzheimer's disease, but we know dementia is not a medical diagnosis. Okay, so they'll look at medical history. They can do a mental status evaluation, and there's so much more available now. I worked in an assisted living, and I'm not a doctor, nor am I a nurse, but they had me doing mini mental status exams on every person who lived there, and that was, who's the current president of the United States? Which state are you in? Well, a lot of people, like my mom, can fly right through that one cognitive test. Now, in 2014, there are a lot more cognitive tests that can be done to really determine, okay, is there something more serious happening? Doing a physical examination, looking at blood pressure and nutrition, and they'll test nervous systems. They'll do that reaction to make sure that your knee pop, whatever that, the nerve and sensation functions that happen. A brain scan to rule out a stroke, most definitely. Lab tests to rule out other disorders. Psychiatric evaluation to find out if there might be something in the mental illness category that might be causing dementia symptoms. And then, this one's super important, interviews with family members. There are so many people who take a really long time in getting an accurate diagnosis, or they never do, because they cover for it, and their spouses cover for it, and the family covers for it. And that happens. It's a very common thing, and it makes sense, but it doesn't help the situation. There are, okay, I don't want to dig really deep, but there's a thing called retrogenesis, where they take a childhood development scale from birth to about 24 years of age, and they put it right next to the stages of Alzheimer's disease, and it's extremely similar. It's just that Alzheimer's disease is going in reverse. So what is, as the brain is going basically backwards in time with Alzheimer's disease, what is one, well first, what's one of the first words that we ever use and continue to use? No, right? So that's a commonly used word that you hear a lot, no, even if they may not even understand the question you're asking. The other thing is social skills. That's a long-term embedded thing that we have. Hi, how are you? Good. And how are you feeling?
Good.
Good. And how's the weather today?
It's beautiful.
I mean, we can go on like back and forth like that in a doctor's appointment, and they get sent out. There's nothing wrong. Well, that's because I have the ability from long-term memory on how to have, just a social skills banter back and forth. We had a woman who lived in the assisted living where I worked, and people would come in, and families would actually get pretty upset Why does she live here? She seems so much more high function. She doesn't belong here. Why is she here? Well, how long did you visit with her? Well, 10 minutes every day. Well, how about next time you visit with her for 15 minutes? And then you'll find out she believes that she is the owner of this facility. Her car's outside. She tells us all what to do. She's running things. So social skills, that's a long-term thing. And that happens a lot of times when people go in, if they just send their loved one alone, or if the spouse answers, oh, they're fine, everything's fine. That happens a lot, okay? Okay, well, the diagnosis is Alzheimer's disease. I just think that this slide sort of sums it up. And I know without a doubt, if you have experienced this, or you lost someone, or you work with someone, if a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease is handed out, there are a million emotions that come with that. Shock, which oftentimes equals denial. How can this possibly be true? Confusion, worry. I worry all the time, without a doubt. Fear, a lot of fear about what's to come in the future. Grief, a lot of grief. Nancy Reagan really was the one who kind of coined the term the long goodbye, because she felt like, and no matter what, with him going through the disease, she was experiencing grief in losses of that individual who you know, losses along the way of their ability to basically be themselves. So a lot of long-term grief, anger, without a doubt, a lot of anger. This is not how this was supposed to turn out. We just retired last year. We're ready to head off into the sunset and do a million things. There's a lot of anger. I feel like some of what we do through our helplines is basically give people permission that it's okay to be angry, as long as you're not taking it out on the person with the disease, because they don't have control over it. But anger is a really big one. You're going to hear from one of our colleagues and board members. She is a fantastic presenter, and she'll tell you what her theory on anger is. It's really good. Denial runs really high. I have it too. It's an automatic instinct, but it keeps people from getting help and support. We have families, it's so sad for them to say, wow, we wish we would have known about this and this and this 5 years ago. But we've been going through this alone and we didn't know, because we were in denial. We wouldn't accept it. There is acceptance at some point. There can be relief. We have families who say, I feel really guilty. He's also up there. Guilt is a huge one. I feel really guilty that I almost felt better when he passed away, my grandfather, because he was no longer going through this, in the end stages of this. And just to be able to express that with people who understand, it makes a big difference. So without a doubt, this disease comes loaded with a ton of emotions. Okay, very quickly. And we have handouts that go into this in big detail. Doctors will use a 7-point scale, or I've even seen a 14-point scale. At the Alzheimer's Association, we basically use early, middle, late. There are things that happen in the early stage, the middle stage, the late stage. Sometimes you'll go, well, but that's a symptom in the early stages, and then it seems like may need help grooming. That's further down in the middle stages. It's not black and white. It's gray all over the place. Again, I heard a doctor describe Alzheimer's disease progresses like a slide on a playground. It's sort of here, and then it just goes like this. Whereas vascular disease progresses like a stair step. It's more, okay, they're at this ability in their just overall daily life abilities, and then boom, you have a significant drop in all kinds of things. And then it'll level out. It might level out for a couple months or a couple of years, and then boom, significant drop. So more like a stair-step progression. Early stages, more short-term memory loss, difficulty managing money, driving, social situations, middle stage, more, you start to notice, sorry, this isn't the medical term, but they'll say word salad, where the sentences just do not come out in a coherent, clear sentence. Problems keeping track of personal items, and as the disease progresses, more help with grooming, with everything, with knowing how to brush teeth, with knowing how to bathe, with not arguing with you that I just took a bath. Well, actually, it's been a week. That's, you know, in my mind, if I think I just did, you're not going to argue me out of that. So grooming can become a really big issue. And then in the later stages, it does develop and progress into long-term memories. And eventually, and sometimes even in middle stages, 24/7. That's why, as you all know, caregivers, whether you're professional, personal, it's really difficult. There are studies that show that caregivers' physical health oftentimes declines quicker than the person with the disease and can pass away before the person with the disease because it's so stressful, 24/7. Dr. Monica Parker, she talks about the importance of finding things out much earlier in the process. For the first time ever, we have a program called Early Detection Matters. With Alzheimer's disease, we've never used the terminology early detection. Well, they do that on other diseases, we know, very clearly. Very clearly. Just think about for a second, when we were at a point where we did not talk about breast cancer. That was a no-no subject. And then, as things have progressed, now look. Now they've actually been able to lower death rates, and one of the things that they talk about, particularly related to cancer, is the importance of early detection. Well, now we feel like we can say the same thing about Alzheimer's, even though there is not a current treatment or cure, because there's a lot that can be done during this process. Learning about the disease, what it does to the brain, so many things. Like all day long, we're going to flood you guys with information, and it truly will help people that you are with Alzheimer's disease. So planning early. One thing is, again, sorry, but I use a lot of personal examples. When I think about the things that we could have done earlier in this process that now it's not possible, there are so many things. I want my independence as long as possible. I also don't want to reach the point where I'm driving beyond my capability. So if I could have a conversation like that with my family and say, okay, if I reach the point where I'm no longer safe, but I don't believe it, you have to do something. You have to take care of this. Or let's put a will in place, a power of attorney, who's gonna answer medical questions and things. Whereas now, as later in the process and the disease process, it becomes very hard to get those things in place. Developing a relationship, getting a team of people together that can help through this process. The legal, like I was talking, the legal things that come up with this disease. I had a family that called yesterday, and the daughter said, myself and my dad and my sister, we are at our wits' end. We are doing so much for our mom to try to help her, but we have another sister in another state who's trying to file for guardianship of our mom, and she doesn't believe any of this is happening. She's not here. She hasn't seen mom. And so they're in all kinds of legal stuff. And that, I'm sorry to say, it's very common. It's very common between family members. Financial. As of last year, we can now say that Alzheimer's disease is the most expensive disease in America. It costs more to Medicare and Medicaid than any other. And the 24-hour round-the-clock that's provided, even if it's a caregiver who's non-paid, it's very, very expensive. So being able to talk about that, plan for it, have conversations, it's amazing what long-term care will pay for when other things won't. It is important to have those things earlier. Getting a support system, finding out everything that is available and getting in it, and educating yourself about the disease. I think that's one of the most significant things that you can do. Educate yourself about the disease rather than running in the other direction, because there is so much more information than ever before. And it may not be Alzheimer's disease. That's why it's also really important in the early red warning signs of things to find out. It might be something else. Medications. So right now, there are basically 2 different types of medications that are approved, but they do not stop the progression of the disease. They more help with symptoms, and enough people, as they were going through clinical trials, were helped that they are FDA approved to treat Alzheimer's disease. But again, as I heard a doctor, I thought this was a great description. If you have a bad knee and you need to get to work, you got to go about your business, and you either rub some of that good cream on it and it makes the pain kind of go away, or you get a shot in your knee and it helps for the day or the week and it allows you to do what you need to do. Well, that's like a current FDA approved Alzheimer's medication. It will do that, but it's not fixing the problem of the bad knee. I thought that helped me sort of think about, again, when I worked directly in an assisted living, we could see the difference when a person actually was prescribed Aricept, and then the most recent one that was approved, which by the way has been years and years ago, but now a lot of physicians will do Aricept with Namenda, and you can, on a lot of people, you can see a difference in just getting through the day better. But it's not actually, the underlying thing is it's not treating that. So when we sort of pound this in all day long, the importance of research is really important. When I talked about Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death, if I put up the top 10 causes of death, and Alzheimer's is number 6, it's the only one on the list that does not have a treatment, a prevention, a cure, none of those things. So that just makes it even more super important. Okay. Am I doing okay on time, timekeeper? Okay.
Let's
all
see
right.
if this works. Hold on.
So what can we expect from these drugs?
Can't hear.
Primarily, we can expect.
It's a big room.
Sorry, I know.
Okay, well.
I'm so sorry I didn't bring giant speakers for you. Okay, so clinical research studies, like other diseases, that's the only way that we are going to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Treatments for people who currently have the disease, and prevention for all of us who don't have the disease, but we're aging, so we're at risk. Clinical trials fuel that. We're very fortunate, not only in the United States, but in the state of Texas, and also in San Antonio. I know we're not close to you, but when we talk about research studies that are being done, we're not talking about things that are happening over off in Sweden. There are Alzheimer's research studies that are being done in the state of Texas all over, and in the city of San Antonio, in Houston and Dallas. So there are clinical trials to be able to participate in. And right now, there is a shortage. I kind of make a joke that, there's only so many mice that they can try these things out on. But eventually, everything, including medications, treatments, everything, it does have to be tried out on humans. And right now, there is a shortage. So we have information on our table on a program called Trial Match, where all researchers dump their clinical trial information into this database, and you can go in and put in basic information about yourself or your loved one and see if you can get a match to a clinical trial. We had a board member who did it, and unfortunately the closest clinical trial for her was in Austin, and then she just had to sort of decide with her mom, okay, do we want to enroll in this and drive up the road or not? But found a match. That's a new thing in the last couple of years. Pretty amazing. Okay, thank you. Okay, I do want to make sure that you all also know that there are resources and support available. The helpline that the Alzheimer's Association runs is 24/7, and if you have a phone, no matter where you live, how big, how small, how rural, if you have a phone, you can get to us 24 hours a day. And you're not going to get an answering machine where you have to leave a message. You're going to get a human being who will speak with you at midnight, 3, 4 in the morning, whatever it takes. Anybody, whether you're a professional, whether right now you have a question about something I said like Down syndrome, you can call our helpline and they will talk with you, load you up with information, send it out, help find the local chapter of where your aunt lives in Seattle and get you connected there. We do a lot of educational programs. This was just a little snippet. So if you want us to come back, wholeheartedly, we want to do as much as we can for all communities in the way of education and classes. And we also train volunteers who can help us do that as well. Information and referral, we are not going to tell you, go to this place, don't go to this place. But we are going to be very honest with, and we are very honest with people about, you know what, this is no longer safety at home, or this is a caregiver situation where your caregiver is about to drop and you need support, respite, going somewhere, having someone come into the house. So we do keep information and referral. And the only way we get that information a lot of times is if you contact us. So it's really important that we also have a relationship with all professional caregivers, because again, our role is not to say this one's good or bad. Our role is to say we can help you through this process. We can help in it, just being able to talk about how guilty you feel and having to have extra care, but how this disease, oftentimes, I don't care how big your family is or how small, it takes a lot. It takes a lot. I'm one sibling of 5, and it's all on me. So I heavily rely on the support of others. I can't tell you enough how helpful it is. Care consultation is, we're going to help and we're going to go beyond giving you information and referral of sources. We're going to sit down and help you, like a care planning. Have you done this? Have you gone over this? Have you thought of this? All the safety issues that come up. If a person is no longer in today, they're no longer in our reality, their brain is in their time frame, their reality. Safety services are significant. What do you mean I can't drive? There's nothing wrong with my driving. This is my mom. You ran through a stop sign. Well, how do you answer that? Wow, okay, you're right, you haven't been in a crash, but your ability to make quick decisions and watch the front mirror and the side mirror and everything that it takes to drive. Driving is one of those huge issues, and we have a lot of support on how do you even tackle that, because it is a safety issue, if not for your loved one, for all the rest of us on the road. We'll kind of do a test of, okay, you're okay to drive. Would you, is it okay if I send my little 2-year-old niece on the road with her? No. Well, then how does that make that different for anything else? So it's hard. We understand that. We have a lot of information about safety services, driving, as well as wandering. If the house I live in no longer looks like the house that I grew up in when I was 7, everything is a queue with Alzheimer's disease. That door is a queue. So I'm going to go through it and wander. And oftentimes not remember my purse, not remember where I'm going, a lot of times not be able to say what my name is or where I live. So we do have important things that you can enroll in, like medic alert, safe return for individuals who wander. We have a huge online community. Our websites are full of information. We have support groups. I heard Olga talking about starting a support group in this community. There is really nothing like being able to talk with someone who understands, who can understand when you feel guilty for getting mad, or everything that comes up. So support groups they can really help a lot. We also have a telephone support group if you can't get to one in person, and you would think that's kind of odd, but by the time we get done with it, people say, I am so thankful that I was able to talk with all of you. And I got your tip on, what do I do when she calls 20 times in the middle of the night? Or just all those kind of things that you can share. Go ahead. Without a doubt, we have door prizes and things to give away today. And what we are asking is that you all we feel like you're an advocate for people with Alzheimer's because you're here anyway. We just sort of want to make it official so that you are an advocate. You don't go into our donor database unless you make a donation. If you become an advocate, that means you'll get information on the state or the federal government is about to give money to a support program or they're not. And we need you to say, hey, this disease it needs to be such a bigger priority than it is. Walk to End Alzheimer's, those are our signature fundraising events so that everything we do is free, no charge. The only thing that has a charge is if you register your loved one on Medical Alert Safe Return, because Medical Alert, you have to pay Medical Alert to get enrolled onto that safety program. Otherwise, all of our programs and services are free. We do that because we fundraise. And then the longest day of the year is June 21st. And so the association has now done a special day on June 21st every year where we ask for you to, for caregivers who every day seems like the longest day, do something that you love and try to raise money while you're doing it. So we're going to have all kinds of fun activities on the longest day of the year, which is June 21st. Keep going.
You want to try it?
We can try that one.
We have
No.
a new set of
Well-
speakers.
You can try if you want. I have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you,
I
guys.
think it is important to reach out to the Alzheimer's Association. They have information to help you plan and think through the critical steps that you need to take on immediately, and I think that's very important. I also think it's important to reach out and build the community of friends and family that will be there to help support you as you go through that. It's a critical disease that can't be done alone, and you can't care for a person alone in that process. There's too many stories about the difficulties that brings. So I think early on it's important for you to build that community and those relationships so that you know you have people you can call on to help you when the time is there.
Not waiting till a crisis. That happens a lot. People call us because they reach a crisis. Will you go back one slide? Again, we have a table. Visit every table out there. That is our 800 number that's available. I'll give you, we have cards with our 210 number as well. Our national website is alz.org. Our chapter website, we have that as well. And I left literally 1 minute for, does anyone have a question that you thought of while I was going through all that? Please.
Is there a gerontologist in San Antonio that you recommend?
Yes. I can't say the word recommend, but we do. We keep a list, and you can actually get it off of our website, or you can call. We can email it to you. So we keep a list of neurologists, geriatricians, neuropsychiatrists that are available. And again, I wish I could say that it was I wish we have. It's kind of amazing. It does depend on where you live, because we see some of the resources out of some of the other states, and they do have more. I wish that we had more. I'll just throw out one is Dr. Weiss. He is fantastic, and we wish we had about 25 of him, because he can only cover so much. But yes, we do keep a list, and we can mail it, email it, or you can call it and have it sent right away. And we can, and definitely we want to talk with you about it, the whole thing, just, you know. Any other questions? Nope? Okay. Thank you guys very much. And thank you, Mark, for